Let's go to Beis Ches on page 109, the second Sikha, this Farbrengen. Du man Yisrael, Shabbateri, Lag Baomer Yitzim, the Kol Yali Yisrael, Tamid Chadarim Al Sada, Zachem Keshes. It's known, the Jewish custom, the custom of Jewish people, it's called Torah. Then on Lag Baomer, we go out, the students of the yeshivas, of the cheders, go out in the field, and they play with a bow and arrow.
Whatever goes on.
Zayin was a mimer. Want to learn about mimer?
No, I'm asking. Oh, so there is a mimer, they just chose to put it in.
No, the mimer's in here. I just chose to skip it now.
Yeah.
We did do something for the mimer yesterday. The thing about hate Shabbat hate, that was the mimer. But Bira Tam Migishat and explain this custom. Let's preface as follows. Since the entire life of Shema Yochai, there was no rainbow in there's no rainbows. Because the whole point of a rainbow is to remind Hashem, or Hashem puts the rainbow in the sky to emphasize that He is protecting the world, but only because of His promise, not because of the merit of the world. So because of Shema Yochai's merit was so great, there was no need for that sign because there was sufficient merit in the world because of Shema Yochai. And that's why on the day of the passing of Shema Yochai on Lag Baomer, we play with a bow and arrow to show that from the moment of his passing, there is a need for a rainbow. And the Hebrew word, just like the English word for a bow and arrow, is the same root as the word for a rainbow. But according to this, the game on Lag Baomer with a rainbow, with a bow and arrow, is a negative thing. It's emphasizing that we really would need the protection of Hashem's promise, and because we don't have enough merit. Had Shema Yochai still been here, things would have been better. So the whole point, it seems, of the bow and arrow is a negative thing. We're emphasizing that things aren't the way that we like them to be. Things we're stuck. We have to have the merit. We have to have rainbows. We have to have Hashem's promise to protect us, because without His promise, we wouldn't be doing it. So it comes out the whole thing of the rainbow, the bow and arrow is negative. We could explain that this custom of playing with the bow and arrow actually has a positive message. It says in the Zohar, do not expect the feet of Mashiach until you see the rainbow with bright colors. And when you do, you could expect Mashiach. Instead of the rainbow being a negative thing, the Zohar says that seeing the rainbow with bright colors is a sign that Mashiach has come. And it says you'll see the feet of Mashiach. The feet of Mashiach means that not just you see Mashiach's face, the Zohar's words, you'll see the feet of Mashiach means the Mashiach is completely here. I don't know what the difference really is. I mean, but I guess.
Well, I guess a face maybe could be an image, but it's a full person, it's physical.
Could be the feet, the lowest levels of something. So it's the full revelation of Mashiach. Not just he's in them. Rebbe always says, Mashiach should come lower than 10 tefachim, all the way in a physical, tangible way. So the Lag Baomer, I remember when I was a child, I heard this recently. It's just, I remember thinking, it's like, the reason is, since it's morning, we're playing the bow and arrow because we don't have Shema Yochai. It's like, it's opposite. The bow and arrow, it also is connected to coming Mashiach. Another weird thing that it has, a child was thinking, Mashiach's coming associated with rainbows, just like rainbows. It's like, wow, Mashiach. No, you ever felt like that also? Okay, I'm only we were one, fine. Kivan Lag Baomer, Yem Lushad Rashbi, Shayadi Yosef Sich Satzil as Galas Pim Sater, Ba'ad Leif Nefut Futzam Sach Chutza, Jezu Yachon Akdam Ukli Bis Mashiach, V'chein Negam Sachim Zeh Bekeshes, Leim Ram Zakeshes Gavon Nehir Shasem Sim Ag Mashiach. Since the day of Lag Baomer is the day of the passing of Rashbi, and he was the one who opened up the channel for the revelation of the inner dimension of the Torah, and not just in the Zohar, but he is the one who caused also that later, the revelation through the Baal Shem Tov. so that the wellsprings of Chassidus can reach the outside. And the Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov that when he's going to come, when this teachings of Rashbi, teachings in the inner dimension of Torah are going to be spread to the outside. So therefore, we play with the bow and arrow on Lag Baomer to hint that we have, because of Rashbi, we expect to see the rainbow, the bright colors, which is a sign that Mashiach is completely and fully here. So that's why we play with the rainbows. On the contrary, it's because the day of Lag Baomer is associated. It's a catalyst for Mashiach to come, and so therefore we play with the bow and arrow to highlight that this is a day which brings Mashiach. This is a day which was a pivotal moment for the coming Mashiach. I don't know if there mentions this Farbrengen, but another Farbrengen. Oh, it's later on the Farbrengen. Yeah, later in the Farbrengen, there speaks about how it talks about different things which are called the beginning of Geula, and he says that that when the Shimon Yochai and his son saw a child, they came out of the cave and they were upset at what they saw, and they saw a man carrying Hadassim to Hadassim, and they asked him what to Hadassim for, and he said, "This is for Zachar and Shomer in honor of Shabbos." Hashem said, "Remember Shabbos and guard the Shabbos." So later on we'll get later on. I don't know.
Shabbos?
I don't know. So the Rebbe says that also was like the beginning of the revelation of Mashiach. There's different parts of the beginning of the revelation of Mashiach, but the fact that Ashru was ready to leave the cave and he said, "Oh wow, what a wonderful world," that was the beginning of the revelation of Mashiach in some way. The schach of the Gil was spiritually, spiritual the beginning of the Gil.
The Alter Rebbe also talks about a schach.
Yeshua Hesef, the feed of Mashiach. Okay, born arrow. Yeshua Hesef, vayre shaychas aminid b'kazis v'v'heshka b'gmeim latina chamdat. How come it says specifically that children play the bow and arrow? Why doesn't everybody, based upon this? There's another concept associated with Lag Baomer about students. It says in Lag Baomer, the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped to pass away. Rabbi Akiva was a teacher of Shimon Yochai. The reason they were passing away, it says, because they didn't show respect for each other. So therefore, this day was said as a day of joy for all students of Torah, in order that they should know and remember, we have to show respect for each other, to act in an appropriate way to nullify the decree. This means this. These two manners of conduct, whether you're acting with respect for each other or you're not, that's actually not the issue. That's just a result of the way you're approaching Torah. There are two ways of learning Torah. One way of learning Torah inspires people to show respect for each other. Another way of learning Torah inspires people not to respect each other. The Torah actually, it says in the Gemara, could be called a poison. It's not learned the right way. So depending on how you're learning Torah, that could affect. That's the reason why, just learned yesterday, that studying different parts of the Torah reveal Hashem in your world more. If you study the inner dimension of Torah, so that where godliness is revealed, so then you're able to see also in your world divine providence more. So to the Rebbe says that the way you learn Torah, not just the items, the subject matter of what you learn Torah, but the way you learn Torah affects your behavior towards other people. When your approach to studying Torah is, and you recognize and you feel this is the wisdom of Hashem, automatically your excitement in studying the Torah is not because of your own feeling of arrogance and self-worth. God forbid, rather, you're learning and understanding the wisdom of Hashem. So you won't be upset if another guy learns Torah better than you. Even if your friend asks a question on what you said, and he proves to you that you made a mistake. If you're learning Torah because it's the wisdom of Hashem, not only won't you get upset, on the contrary, you'll thank him because he saved you from a mistake. He saved you from the opposite of truth, from lying, because the way you understood the Torah before was a lie, wasn't true. The evil inclination drew you on the wrong path in Torah, and your friend brought you to the right path, the path of God. He brought you back to the truth, the Torah of Hashem. So instead of it being something that you'll be upset about, you'll be so thankful. Wow, thank you so much for setting you straight. By the way, it's a big thing to do that, you see it on these chats all the time, you ask some questions. And I posted a question myself yesterday. And I don't know, this guy out of nowhere, he sent me like a 15-minute voice note to explain to me the concept really deeply. This guy's in England somewhere. And like it's such a so refreshing. It's such obviously so out of his way to talk to Julia's name. I know your name, but you asked a question, so let me explain what I know about it. Maybe. Anyways, so
What was the question?
I could send you the voice note if you want.
Please.
The question is, how can there be evil? Mashiach will come if it says Hashem will remove. How can there be non-kosher food and non-kosher animals? Mashiach will come if it says Hashem will remove impurity from the world.
Long time ago, the Yudassim said every day we said we should go back to being called the Talmud and our sins.
No.
We're not supposed to sin. Sins is supposed to be done.
Okay, so say for previous sins. The question is, how can there be non-Jews in the world? It doesn't tell you their existence comes from the three impure clippers, and if Hashem will remove the clip from the world. So if you want to know the answer, you could message me and I'll send you the long voice note. When you study the Torah in that way, as I had Gemara says that Reb Shimon Yochai was upset when one of the sages who was part of a ruling, he was supported a ruling, and then he went against the same ruling. Reb Shimon Yochai said to him, even harlots apply makeup to each other. But if because of what you've done and you've basically like sabotaged, you threw the whole group under the bus, you are going to cause people to say that although harlots apply makeup to each other, but Talmid Chachamim, they do the opposite. They don't show respect for each other. But if you study Torah with in a manner of you're trying to understand the wisdom will of Hashem, not only will there be no room for jealousy and hatred, on the contrary, you'll apply makeup to the other guy. You'll give honor to the other guy. Asher Enking, they see you'll little mascara. Anyway, Asher Enking, Asher Enking, Asher get to my teddy baby. However, when your approach to study of Torah is with the thought that my strength and my power brought me success, I am accomplishing something. Who shall kusha? I asked the question. Taretz teretz. I gave the answer. Makshal to be explaining. I have a question. What this guy said. Tom is not say yeshu yeshus, and then I feel great about myself. From gam gaiva, not just so I feel a sense of self, of feeling my existence. So just use the word yeshus, but beyond yeshus, there's something called gaiva, clear arrogance. So if someone comes over and sets him straight, or even just proves to him that he has a better answer. Not that your answer is wrong, I'll tell you a better answer. But there's a mind of the Musa. So this he's lessening his self-image. For sure, be angry. If you're studying Torah with this feeling that it's my strength and my power that's accomplishing everything, if someone else disproves him or even has another caveat, another thing to add, it's going to cause anger. Till now, he thought that it was his power that accomplished so much in Torah. And he was walking around saying, let my innards, let my stomach rejoice. Look what I did. Look what I've done. When the other guy comes along and shows him he was mistaken, that his wealth from Torah is imaginary. He shows him that he has a false image, a false ideas. He's going to get angry because this guy burst his balloon. When he studied Torah in that manner, so then the way people act as a result of that manner of Torah study is they will not show respect for each other. Obviously, this is not what our Kippur students were doing. They were perfect tzaddikim. And so their lack of respect for each other was a whole different ballgame, something that it's beyond even our imagination, what the subtleties were of their lack of respect. It has to do with the gevura, the way Gvura is in the higher worlds, and as a result of the Gvura in the higher worlds, it caused it'll trickle down into the idea of a kapeda of on their level, whatever that means. But it's obviously not what we're talking about. We're talking about just a feeling when you're learning Torah that it's about what you can accomplish, and therefore the result of that is going to be that you're going to get upset when people set you straight. Move on. We find a great story about that. I posted one on What's the Shabbos. It's actually fun. It's a great story. This understood also regarding the study on Lag Baomer that when we're remembering the students of Rabbi Akiva, we have to inspire ourselves to show respect for each other. When we say that there's a rule that you have to show respect for other people, it doesn't mean that your Torah study could stay the same way, and the change has to only be in the way you show respect for each other. I'm just reading the Friedrich Rebbe's description of the city of the Rashbatz, and Rashbatz was a child, and the Rashbatz noticed that among his contemporaries in the Litvish world, he noticed that though they show respect for each other, they don't really respect each other. They don't really. And by the Chassidim, so they actually there's actually a difference for each other. So it's not to physically show respect for another person. That's not the issue. The lack of respect is a consequence because the Torah wasn't studied in an appropriate way. Rather, what we need to do is we have to change the whole way we're studying Torah, so that will preclude the possibility of there being a lack of respect. But Omar, how do we do this? We have to realize when we're studying Torah, this is the wisdom and will of Hashem. That's what we're trying to do. And if we approach studying Torah that way, so automatically this will bring respect for each other. The problem isn't the external showing of respect, that's just a consequence. The problem is in the whole approach to the study of Torah. So the yeshiva students don't have to just show deference to each other externally, which is also a good thing, but they have to start from a more deeper approach to the whole way they're studying Torah to realize that what they're doing is trying to connect to the godliness in Torah, trying to hear God talking to them. What's the advice to do Torah that way? Sounds great. Okay, so we're supposed to study Torah that way. Person could just say, okay, I'll study Torah that way. But how do you do that? That's not just a decision. You need a rainbow. You need a bow and arrow. What's the meaning of a bow? It says in Chassidus that there are two kinds of weapons. Says by Yaakov said he conquered Shechem with his bow, an arrow, and with his sword. The two kinds of weapons, an arrow and a sword. And what's the difference between an arrow and a sword? Through a sword, you're able to attack an enemy who is close to you, and you see with your eyes. But through a bow and arrow, you're able to also attack an enemy which is hidden and far away. Hashem, what's that mean for us personally? It's not sufficient to caution and to fight and to be victorious over an enemy who is in close proximity to you. What does that refer to in our lives? That means taking care of those things that everybody knows. It's from the Yitzhahara, from the opposite of holiness. It's not sufficient just to remove from our midst the things that everybody knows. It's obvious. This is the Yitzhahara stuff. Of course, you have to do that too. But besides that, we also have to caution and protect ourselves from a hidden enemy who's far away. And for the sake of getting rid of the hidden enemy, we need to have a bow and arrow. Through the bow and arrow, we're able to hit an enemy who's far away. What does it mean practically? In order to study Torah in an appropriate way, learn Torah with reverence for Hashem. It says in Sefta Shabbos that without reverence for Hashem, it's like having wheat without the preservative. That the wheat will spoil. So the Torah won't be the way it's supposed to without fear of Hashem. So how do you have fear of Hashem when you study Torah? Be careful about those things which seem to be not related to Torah study, things which are distant. You have to take care of those things which seem to have no relevance to your study of Torah. As the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe says, in order that your Torah study should be the way it's supposed to, you need many things to prepare in order to get there. One, for example, Tar b'mikvah, Sil Staka, Til Arichos, Min Stilim, Chumash Pirshashi, Pesach Hasalei. Doesn't give limit up Pesach Hasameh. The previous Rebbe writes that order that your Torah study should be the way it's supposed to. You have to go to the mikvah before you pray. You have to give tzedakah. You have to daven at length. You have to say Tehillim. You have to learn Chumash with Rashi, because studying Chumash with Rashi opens your heart, and so too you have to study Torah, which opens your mind. I think it says about Rashi and Gemara opens your mind. Okay, move on. Maya Similarly, what do those things have to do with the study of Torah? Let's say instead of going to mikvah, instead of davening, instead of doing all these things, instead of saying Tehillim, I'll learn another half hour of Gemara. Won't I accomplish much more with another half hour of Gemara than I will with doing all these things? And the answer is specifically through these three things. Whose impact, their impact seems to be totally not related to the study of Torah. That's what will make sure your Torah study will be the way it's supposed to. Mashal Kashas is like the bow and arrow. A bow and arrow doesn't only touch the enemy who's close to you, it touches an enemy who's far away. So similarly, in order to cause our Torah study to be the way it's supposed to be, we have to reach out and use the bow and arrow in our lives, which means doing things which seem to be unrelated to our Torah study. That's the way we can ensure that Torah study and our approach to Yiddishkeit, to Judaism, should be the way it's supposed to be. So mikvah and davening at length, that makes us be the way we need to be, and automatically our Torah study will be the way it's supposed to be. So that's the meaning of the bow and the arrow. The sword. The sword is to move the things which are obviously Sahara, and the arrow is about going to the root of things and trying to fix ourselves inside so that we don't end up doing the wrong thing. We don't end up. It's fixing up. We don't have an urge to do the wrong thing, to fix up the way we are, who we are. There's another point about this mashal, about this example of the bow and arrow. We've seen clearly, as it says in Chassidus, that in order for an arrow to reach a farther place, you have to pull the bow closer to yourself. The closer you pull the bow to yourself, the farther the arrow will reach. The reason why this is emphasized, I'm mentioning that it says this in Chassidus, even though it's something which is obvious. So why am I mentioning that it says in Chassidus specifically? The reason I'm mentioning it says in Chassidus, even though you could see this is true, is because in things that you see clearly, just because you see them clearly with your eyes, it doesn't mean that they're real. Only if something is said in Torah, and in our discussion in Chassidus, can you know that it's really true, or this is something that you could, or that's something you need to learn from. How do you know it's really real? You only know it's real if it says so in the Torah. I saw this answer the Rebbe a few months ago. It's amazing how the Rebbe views reality and what reality really is. The Rebbe said, I don't want to misquote, but I think the point the Rebbe said like this, that based on my experience in life, and I've heard from people who are trustworthy, and moreover, I've heard people who are trustworthy, and moreover, it says so in Torah. We're speaking about the power of one Jew giving the bracha to another. The bracha, which is given from the heart to another person, that for sure has an impact, for sure causes something good to happen. But the Rebbe presents this, how do I know this is true? It's my experience. Besides my experience, I heard this from people who are reliable, and more importantly, it says so in Torah. So it says in the Torah that when you pull an arrow to you, it reaches a farther place. What does it mean spiritually? Pulling the bow rather, lower and closer to your heart indicates it's connected to bittul, the shiful tatzmai. It's about lowering yourself more. And by lowering yourself more, having more abnegation of self, of arrogance, putting that aside and putting yourself aside for the sake of Hashem, through this the arrow reaches a farther place. You're able to reach a more distant enemy. What this means is that the preparation to the study of Torah has to be with a sense of self-deprecation, to know that it's not my power, not my strength, it's only the power of Hashem. And only with the power of Hashem can my Torah study be the way it's supposed to be. That approach of that realization that of bittul, of shiftless, that I have no power on my own, it's only Hashem, that actually enhances your Torah study. That lets the arrow reach a farther place. As we say every day in our prayers, we say that the end of Shemona Esrei, let my soul be like dust to all. And then we say, open my heart to your Torah. At first glance, there are two different requests. One request is, let my soul be like dust to all. And the second request is, let my heart be open to your Torah. But the Rebbe says these two requests are connected. How can my heart be open to your Torah? The more I feel like dust, the more I feel that I have no value and I'm just listening and only Hashem's help that makes things work, that will allow my heart to be more open to your Torah, besser and schneller. I can faster and more better understand and more appreciate not just the Torah, it seems, but also what's inside the Torah, so that I'm learning the Torah in the best way. So now to explain the custom, why specifically students in yeshiva play with the bow and arrow. When the students play with the bow and arrow, what that means is that you need to have a bow and arrow in order to make sure that your Torah study should be the way it's supposed to be. And we're empowered to do this from the day of Lag Baomer, day of the passing of Shimon Yochai, whose main essence was the inner dimension of Torah, because through the inner dimension of Torah, that creates this approach to all areas of Torah, including the revealed parts of Torah, that to have that sense of Hashem's, that this is the wisdom and will of Hashem, to have that feeling, this is the wisdom and will of Hashem, that is achieved specifically by studying the inner dimension of Torah. Now, obviously, by studying the inner dimension of Torah, that will also quiet the other notions that we may feel, it's my strength and my power. And this study of the inner dimension of Torah enhances our fear of Hashem, and then our Torah study will be the way it's supposed to be. So that's why students of yeshiva specifically play with the bow and arrow, in order to highlight that in order for their Torah study to be the way it's supposed to be, they have not just study the Torah, they have to have the bow and arrow. They also have to pull themselves down all the way, and then they can reach much further. They have to lower themselves. I was once at this wedding, and I put on film with this guy from the Marines. It took him like 5 minutes to take off roll up his sleeve, because he's so farkvetched. He's so tied up with that tight military uniform. And I asked him a question I always wondered about Marines. Why in the world would anyone want to be a Marine? It seemed like during the army, okay, you're a patriot, whatever, but Marines are all to be a Marine, kind of training you have to do, he told me something amazing. He says that his officer, his training officer, told him that we make you here like less than man, to make you become something more than man. The similar thing we're saying over here, the idea of the bow and arrow, like Maimer, is that we need to lower ourselves and put ourselves aside and to try to hear that Hashem speaking to us in the Torah study, and not just feel it's my strength, but that will allow us to become more than man. That will allow the arrow to reach farther. That will allow our Torah study to bring us light in our lives and to be elevated to L'chaim. Farbrengen Lag Baomer, Surah's Tevis, and I want to see you guys tonight by the Farbrengen in my house, Mr. Hashem. Here, Dr. Bressman. Here, David.